at 200. Are you ready?
Yeah.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, good morning. I'm Ross. How you doing? Did you have a lovely Monday? There's so much to talk about today. We have some fantastic guests. We've got Speaker of the State House Alec Garnett coming up on the show at 7. We're going to talk about what the legislature is going to do for us, or as I like to say sometimes, to us. I do think that's the direction this is all going. I'll tell you what, I need to take a 5-second pause here. Hang on, people. I'll be right with you. All right. Okay. We'll see if that sounds a little better. So I wanted to, first of all, mention the most important news of the day, of course, is that Punxsutawney Phil came out of his hole this morning in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, and he saw his shadow and predicts that there will be 6 more weeks of winter. On the other hand, if it's 6 more weeks of winter like we've had here in Colorado so far, you will barely know that it's winter. People out and about in shorts and T-shirts yesterday and 50-something degrees at the beginning of February. It's a very, very strange winter indeed, and not a great year for the ski hills. Even, well, you add COVID on top of it, COVID and not great snow, and it's not a great year. But hopefully it'll get better. We sure do want the moisture around here. I want more snow, more rain, more everything. Fill up the reservoirs, soak the land. So I hope that Punxsutawney Phil is correct. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but I don't, I've been a professional financial markets trader since the 1980s. And I don't think I have ever seen an easier, like, just free money trade, and I'm going to tell you right now, I basically missed it, than GameStop, than selling GameStop calls late last week. Again, I'm not going to get into the details. I'll just tell you, there were these options in GameStop that you wouldn't have lost money until the stock got over about $900 a share by this Friday. It would have had to get over $900 a share by this Friday. And you could have bet against that last week, and it was the easiest money I've ever seen. And that same bet right now, so that bet that last Thursday, just 3 trading days before Monday, was trading around 100, closed yesterday at 7. And I'm so, look, I did sell a couple yesterday, but I didn't get great prices like I could have the previous days. And today, so far, in the pre-market, GameStop, which got crushed yesterday, is down another $90 a share to about $134 a share. And I still think this is on its way back down to maybe single digits. Although it'll take a while to get to single digits. Who knows? Maybe they can turn their business around and it won't be single digits. But it's never going to be this price. So be careful. That's my main point right now. Be careful if you were buying AMC, if you were buying any of these internet things, if you were buying silver, any of this stuff being talked about on the message boards. Just please be careful. We'll talk about it more a little bit later in the show. So one of the interesting things going on in politics right now is the ongoing debate about how much money to spend on so-called COVID relief. Now, before I get into the details of the negotiation, I want to make one point that I think explains a very, very significant difference between what's going on right now with this kind of spending and other occasional massive spending. Hey, can you copy the audio over from the OneDrive? And that is, let me give you an example. The kind of thing that might cause you to look to spend hundreds of billions of dollars. I'll give you one theoretical scenario. Let's say you've got a military that hasn't been properly funded for a long time, and we've got not enough ships in our Navy and not enough airplanes in our various flying forces and not enough spare parts, so that a lot of the airplanes are grounded because they're missing a part here or there and we can't find the parts. And when you're in that kind of situation as a world superpower, you might end up saying, I need to spend $100 billion or whatever the number is. And of course, Trump did do that. And the thing about that kind of spending is, as time passes, the spending becomes more urgent because all of these issues that are, in my example, plaguing your military only get worse over time, right? More parts fail, but you don't have spare parts, so now you have an even less effective military over time. Another ship gets decommissioned. Now your Navy is one ship smaller over time. As time passes, the necessity for that spending increases. But what's going on right now with COVID is one of the few times that I can think of, maybe the only time I can think of, where with the passage of time, the necessity for the spending is declining. And it's a really important difference for the politics of all this, right? So as we've got, with a little luck, because this is the goal right now, and it's not even that aggressive a goal, if we've got 1 million Americans a day being vaccinated, and if we're vaccinating the people with the highest risk, that actually means that, for example, if you're vaccinating the people with the most risk, if you get 20% of the country vaccinated, you might have reduced 70% of the national risk of death. And that's not an exaggeration, because the morbidity and mortality of this disease is massively concentrated in the upper categories of people's age. More than 50% of deaths are among people over the age of 80. And more than another 20% of deaths are among people between the ages of 70 and 80. You're almost at 80%. You're over 75%. Almost at 80% of all deaths are people over the age of 70, who don't represent an enormous percentage of the population. So if you are vaccinating those folks, and assuming the vaccine is highly effective, which it appears to be, then vaccinating 20% of the population, like I said, probably would reduce something like 70% of the risk. So why does that tie into government spending? Because as we get to where the risk is declining every day, there's less and less of an excuse for all of the things that people want to do regarding COVID. All of the aggressive things, all of the business closing things, all of the big spending things. I'm not saying that we should, stop wearing masks the moment the last 70-year-old is vaccinated. You still don't want to get this thing. It can still make you quite sick. And in fact, even if you're not in the older population, it still could kill you. It's just less likely. So we need to beat this thing in its entirety. But we don't need to crush ourselves while we're doing it. There needs to be a better balance, and that balance becomes much easier to shift away from restrictions keep safety, right, but move away from so many restrictions, and importantly, away from another $1 trillion of national debt when most of the risk is gone. And we are drifting in that direction or swimming in that direction quickly. And this is why Democrats are in such a hurry. They say they're in a big hurry to pass this because the American people really need it. They don't mean that. I mean, a few of them might. But mostly, these are smart people. They know. They know that with every passing day, there's less of an excuse. I mean, really, if you think about this logically, let's just say, and I'm not really conceding this, but let's just say that there was a reasonable argument to be made at the beginning of the year for the government to spend $1 trillion, okay? Now, I'm not saying there was, but just stick with me. Say I'm going to go down this road with Democrats. We need to spend this money because people are struggling and yada, yada, yada. And so let's just say there was an argument for $1 trillion. I would think that given the pace on which we're vaccinating people, with every passing day, the amount of money that you could make an argument to spend, if you were good with $1 trillion on January 1st, would probably decline by, I don't know, $5 to $10 billion every day, so that over somewhere between 100 and 200 days into the year, which to me makes sense if you think about the vaccine schedule, so roughly like early April to, I don't know, July, somewhere in that range, the amount of money that you could justify spending phases out completely. In the same way that when the government gave out some of the cash that they gave out, and the way Republicans are talking now, that there's a phase out, right? At some income level, you start losing the amount of check that you'll get, and then at some higher income level, you don't get any check at all from the government, right? That first round of paycheck protection, there was it was $75,000 per person, $150,000 per couple, and it phased out over the next $25,000 per person, $50,000 per couple. So to me, there'd be like a phase out, and with every passing day, you need to spend $10 billion less. So what I would do is, I'd say that with every passing day, we're going to spend $10 billion less. And then what I would do is I would delay until there's no need to spend any further money. But we need to understand what's going on here. Yes, there are some Democrats who think that that some Americans really need the money. And I'm not saying there aren't some Americans who really need the money. But most of this money, I think, is wasted. Most of this money, there's only a small percentage of Americans who are still being hurt by COVID. And you know who they are. People who work in restaurants, people who worked in movie theaters, people who worked in other kinds of businesses where there'd be a lot of sort of close contact involved, and so those businesses aren't happening anymore. And you know what? I could live with an argument that those people have been hurt by the actions of government, and so we're going to take care of them. But I have absolutely no sympathy for any argument that Americans, broadly speaking, need more money, and we're going to give it to them by taxing my children more later. There's no reason that anybody who didn't lose a substantial amount, not just a little, a substantial amount of income from COVID should get anything. But the Democrats want to buy their votes and loyalty forever. The Democrats want to show people that government is good. The Democrats want to show people that we need government and we need to keep voting for them all the time. That's why, as producer Shannon noted, And as Rahm Emanuel noted in different but more famous terms, never let a serious crisis go to waste. Politicians whose mode of operation is spending money will always look for something to claim that is a problem that needs more spending to be solved. So a bunch of Republicans met with Joe Biden yesterday. Nearly 2-hour meeting yesterday to bring to Biden their plan, which is much, much smaller than Biden's $1.9 trillion plan. These guys brought a plan that was has a price tag of about $618 billion. Now, that's still a lot, but it's less than a third of the cost of Biden's proposed plan. Let me just tell you some of the differences. Direct payments to individuals. I object to this strenuously. Biden wants $465 billion, Republicans proposing $220. Aid to state and local governments. Biden wants $350 billion, Republicans propose $0. That's good. Unemployment insurance. So this is a federal unemployment benefit or bonus. Biden wants $400 a month through September. Republicans are talking about $300 a week. I said a month, a week. Biden wants $400 a week through September. Republicans are proposing $300 a week through June. In total dollars, Biden wants $350 billion. Republicans proposing $132. School reopening, Biden wants $170 billion. Republicans proposing $20. They're each proposing $160 billion in direct pandemic response. So that's money to fund vaccine acquisition, distribution, and just making sure the vaccine gets into people's arms. Rental assistance. Biden wants $120 billion. Republicans propose $0. Small business help, $50 billion for each. Child care, that's an interesting one. $40 billion under Biden's plan, $20 billion under the Republicans. And rental assistance, $35 billion under Biden, $0 under the Republicans. Now, it would have been really helpful if there had been one Democrat in this meeting, any Democrat, because if all the Democrats stick together, then they can get this passed with something called reconciliation. That said, they're going to have a very, very hard time getting Joe Manchin to sign on to $1.9 trillion. Not only because Biden is not an insane big spender like most of the rest of them, but also because the Biden administration made an enormous mistake. They sent Kamala Harris to West Virginia to do television ads in favor of this big spending without including Joe Manchin in the conversation. And he feels like they went around him, went behind his back, whatever, and he's pissed. Boy, did they make a big mistake. We'll be right back.
If you missed it earlier, we have your